The ancient Egyptians had a word that we translate protection. It was Sa. It was also a word that means amulet. We see the hieroglyph Sa here. Fashioned in gold, it could be worn around the neck. It was an amulet of protection. The word Sa also meant to the ancient Egyptians those words and gestures needed to activate an amulet, because an amulet was imbued with a magical potency to protect. We see the goddess Taweret leaning on two Sas, two symbols of protection, two amulets. Taweret was a goddess of protection, a household goddess, protecting particularly women and children. Sometimes we see representations of these amulets. Behind the god Nefertem, the divine personification of the lotus flower, we see a large knot, the knot of Isis in ancient Egyptian Tit. It was associated with the protection of motherhood particularly, Isis being a goddess of motherhood. Very often, people in ancient Egyptian society would wear an amulet around their neck. Teti here wears an ankh around his neck. The ankh was a symbol of life. But these amulets weren't always pierced. They might be tucked somewhere, under a mattress, into a bag. A presence, a magical protective presence such as this one would be very useful to the ancient Egyptians because Bez protected the people of Egypt during vulnerable times. Sometimes it was important to the ancient Egyptians what their amulets were made of. This one, in ancient Egyptian Waj, represents papyrus, but very particularly it's made of this bluish-green faience. The colour itself was in ancient Egyptian Waj, and Waj to the ancient Egyptians meant life, good health, vim and vigour. As we might expect, very often these amulets take the form of ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses. This one carved in rock crystal is that goddess Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess, and here we can see her crocodile tail on her back. We might look at this amulet and imagine we're looking at a cat with kittens. Of course we are, but very likely this is a representation of the cat goddess Bastet. Bastet was a goddess of love and fertility, but generally the ancient Egyptians noted the female cat for its fecundity. So when we see an amulet of a cat, often with kittens, we imagine the wearer hoped for fertility. Cats were also considered protective. The lion goddess was Sekhmet. The name Sekhmet means the powerful one, and Sekhmet was a goddess of pestilence and epidemic, but also of healing. Priests of Sekhmet came to be associated with magic and medicine. Amulets were all that was important to the ancient Egyptians, but in miniature. We see examples of tiny models of the counterpoise worn on the back of a great collar, great piece of jewelry. They show the heads of deities. The yellow one, for example, is a ram of the god Amun, with a sun disk on his head and a cobra, a uraeus. Museums around the world with collections of ancient Egyptian antiquities have fabulous examples of these amulets. For example, the scarab. In ancient Egyptian, the word for one of these amulets was khepa. It means to be created or to come into being. It also means a form or a manifestation. There was a god that took the form of the scarab beetle. His name was Khepri. He was associated with rebirth. When we look among the scarabs, we see representations of animals. The cat, as we know, associated with fecundity. Perhaps by wearing a desert animal around one's neck, one was wishing to be imbued with the attributes of that animal, perhaps speed in this instance. Sometimes the amulets were written. They were written on papyrus and placed in gold tubes worn around the neck. We see the tiny roll of papyrus with a hieratic text. These were known as oracular amuletic decrees, and some of the decrees list the parts of the child's body that the gods will keep healthy, from the top of the head to the soles of the feet.